And it looks like we're recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wanderlusting Lawyer. I'm super excited because today I'm doing something I've been wanting to do for and talking about doing for probably a couple years now, but I've just felt intimidated to launch into it. But I am doing an interview, my first interview for the channel with Sarah Blanquet. She is from Crisol Español. She will be talking about what that is in a little bit, but I'm super excited to be here with her today. Sarah and I met through a Camino Facebook group called Camino Confidence. It's run by a wonderful woman named Carol. It's really catered to women of a certain age, so she says, right, that are feeling maybe not as confident about taking on a Camino on their own. So she organizes great small groups or helps with planning. And Sara does some wonderful, pretty much weekly, right? When you're not away, Spanish
Yeah.
lessons, 10 to 15 minutes on great vocabulary for the Camino, tips for, learning about Spanish culture and connecting with locals while you're on the Camino. And Sarah, I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Yes, I'm very excited as well. A little bit nervous. It's also one of my first live recordings, so it's always a little bit intimidating. Hopefully, everything will go as planned. But yes, I've been following your channel as well, and it's lovely to see just women, engaged in the Camino conversation and just talking about Spanish culture, and I really enjoy watching your videos. So I'm really honored to be part of them. And yes, so I teach Spanish online, as you said. I teach mainly for pilgrims, also for other topics, but today we're going to focus on pilgrims and how Spanish can help you improve your experience here in Spain.
Awesome. And hey, don't worry, this is not actually live. So I don't really have the video editing skills, I think, to make too many changes, but I can always do an introduction video at the beginning if anything goes wrong. And hopefully the viewers will be gracious with us, knowing that this is my first interview, one of your first interviews like this. And it is a different feeling than when you're just recording. At least for me, like when I'm recording, I probably have so many outtakes of when I mess up things. So we didn't do a lot of planning on this, guys. We just wanted the conversation to be really free flowing and almost get to know each other, as well as at the same time that you guys are getting to know Sara. So yeah, I think we connect really with like both of us have a vision about Camino services that's just embodied around like kindness and helpfulness. And that can be sort of tough to find in the Camino community. So it's, I think we found each other that way and just really wanting to help people out there. And if we get to have like make it a part of our lives as well, like whether it's a business setting and not business setting, I mean, I just think anybody that's giving back to the community, I think we tend to find each other. So super happy to have you here. You introduced yourself a little bit, but why don't you tell us, where you're from? How did you find out about the Camino? And yeah, what's your connection to the Camino that then will transition into made you want to help pilgrims?
Exactly. So yes, I was born initially in Belgium, but I moved here when I was 1 year old. So I was basically I was raised here in Spain. I grew up in Navarra, which is also part of the Camino. Funnily enough, like throughout my life, there are like points like that link me to
Yeah.
the Camino before I knew even about the Camino. I don't really remember how I discovered about the Camino. It was just here in Spain, it's just something people know. It's part of like the culture. So I can't really pinpoint like a moment when I discovered the Camino, but I just once I finished university, I just decided, okay, this is something I want to try. So I did it probably about 10 years ago. So the Camino has changed a lot in these last 10 years. And so when I first started walking, I just discovered something that I really enjoyed without even thinking about it. I didn't have like much preparation or anything. Now I see the forums and it seems crazy
Yeah.
for me that people,
Yeah.
plan their Camino with years of advance and they check everything. For me, it was just like complete adventure. I knew nothing except the fact that I was going to walk from Sarria to Santiago. I did the last little bit. And so that was my only information. And I knew there were arrows that you were supposed to follow. And this was also, before all the technology that we have now, right? 10
Right.
years ago, Facebook was not where it is now, or any of the other apps or Instagram or anything like that. And so I discovered the Camino, and then I think, like everyone, I think you can agree too that once you walk one Camino, if you like it, you're just hooked and you want to walk
Right.
other ones. So I've been doing some other bits and pieces throughout the last 10 years on and off. So I did one when I finished my master's, because yes, I studied master's degree in Spanish teaching. That's how I got into teaching. And when I finished, I thought, oh, it would be nice to do like a Camino to just mark the end of my studies. So I did the
Right.
Norte because I studied in Bilbao. So my graduation was in Bilbao. And I walked from France to Bilbao with my heels and my dress in my backpack. So
Oh,
that's
I
not very
love that.
conventional. But yeah, so that's the second Camino that I did. I also did then a little part from Madrid to my home here. So this was just when I got married. So just after I graduated from my master's. And my husband did actually door to door. So he started in Madrid in his doorstep, and he ended up here in our doorstep, because I live now in Muxia, which is also part of the Camino. Now, this was just coincidence. I did not plan to live somewhere on the Camino. I just found this place where my mom was living, and I decided to move here. And so now every day I'm just in contact with pilgrims. And first I started teaching Spanish online because it was the easy thing to do. You know, I'm in a small village, so there are not many foreigners who want to study Spanish. And then little by little, I just started noticing more and more pilgrims, and I started thinking like, they also need to learn Spanish, and it's also a community that I enjoy being part of. So maybe I could give back a little bit and just help
Right.
them experience a little bit more of the Camino, because I think language is part of your experience, right? When you're walking, it's your day-to-day life. If you're walking the whole Camino, it's for a month, you're going to be immersed in Spanish. So
Right.
why not try to help them just get a feel of what Spain is like a little bit more profoundly than just, the cover image that you get when you're walking like a normal Camino. Let's say if you're not into Spanish, you're probably going to miss a lot of things related to culture. And so I thought it was a
Right.
very interesting topic. And so that's my passion project for now, is just trying to help pilgrims on the Camino.
Right, and I love what you said about kind of the lack of planning and prep for the first one. One, there weren't as many resources, I'm sure, back in 2014. Even when I walked in 2018, I mean, there were some groups, but I think the number of groups on Facebook now for the Camino, I mean, they've just exploded. And when I look at the number of people in some of them, 100, 200,000, you really get the sense of how big this is, like how many people have made this or want to make this a part of their life. But at the same time, I've asked myself, why is it that we Americans, maybe Australians, tend to be the ones who plan the most, sometimes over plan, compared to our European pilgrims? And I think there's a part of it that is maybe a little bit of fear going into the unknown. This might be people's first time on the European continent in a country where English isn't the first language, or maybe where the majority of people, don't even speak it. But also, I think because we have the step of buying the plane ticket, of figuring out the trains, we already have planning necessarily built in. So it does, I think, go a little bit hand in hand, that if you're already planning something, you're going to be planning other things, right? As opposed to, like you said, your husband who could walk out his front door. And we know that's how pilgrims were, right? Back in when pilgrimages were born, you left your front door and that's where you started walking. So I think that tends to be obviously more of the European way. So I try to find a balance. Obviously, my channel is devoted to helping people prepare, but at the same time, I always say part of the joy of it is like learning new things every route, and maybe something that works for me doesn't work for somebody else. And so I think it's good to have a mix of both, right? Having some prep because you wouldn't want horrible blisters to derail, right, your Camino, but at the same time, knowing even as much as I prepare, things might go astray, and what do I do in those circumstances? And I think when things go astray, that's when knowing Spanish or whatever the local language is so key. So I'm gonna have you talk a little bit about that. But first I want to say, like, one of the reasons that to me, like, I have preached long since the beginning about how important it is, right, to learn at least a few languages in whatever language is the local language of your Camino. So if you're going to be doing the Portuguese, learn a few words in Portuguese. obviously the Francés or many of the other routes in Spain, learn some Spanish. And I think most important of all, if you're doing the routes in France, because they really are, I think 90+% of French pilgrims learn some French, right? But I think as we've seen the numbers on the Francais, especially just explode, and people are saying it's hard to find a bed, it's hard to find solitude, it's hard to find the connection I want. There are what, 30, 40 other routes, and nobody's walking them, or one or two people are walking them. And I'm not saying we want the level of traffic that we have on the Francais, because people do go to them because they want solitude. But somebody like me, like, I want moments of walking alone, but I want to find 10, 15, 20 people in the albergues at night to have that connection. And I think the more Spanish people learn, the more comfortable they'll feel saying, hey, I'm going to set off from Valencia. I'm going to set off from Almeria, from Sevilla, from these places where, you're much more likely to not find English speaking help. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about how like, what your business is, and how you're aiming to help, yeah, pilgrims.
Exactly. So yes, my intention is exactly that. So I think, as in any route and any place, like anything that becomes more touristy or more popular, or how, with whichever terms you want to phrase it, it's going to become easier. Of course, the Camino Frances, because many people tell me like, oh, I can walk, I don't need to like speak any Spanish, because people just speak English to me. And I say, yes, that's true. I mean, you will find businesses that are adapted to the pilgrim and that have everything prepared, and you don't even need to speak Spanish. But I do think part of the experience of being, so far away from home, especially if you come from another continent, to be in a situation like that, where you're not local and just discovering new things, is part of also of the experience. So maybe, like, my intent is just for people to be aware that there are differences, and just to kind of adapt or do as much as you can. Like, you have to meet in between, right? The people who are welcoming you, they're walking part of the path for you, and you have to walk the other path, so you can meet in an in between space. So I think it's not very polite to expect people to just walk the whole way.
Right.
You need to, reach a little bit out for them. So I think the best way to do that is just to learn at least basic words. I don't mean to say that you need to be fluent in Spanish to walk the Camino. That's not the case. You can perfectly walk talking English, as I say, but I think you're losing a little bit of that connection, because there's also locals like I am. When I am here around in bars, for example, and I hear people just ordering in English and living their day to day life as they would in their home country, I think you're kind of missing out on of
Yeah.
part of the experience. Just at least to know, yeah, the keywords, maybe some food that you can try. Like, that's one of my passions, food. So that's also something I focus
Same.
on. Exactly. So when you don't know what's on the menu, or you don't know the dishes, maybe there are things that you would like to try, but you just don't know what they're called in Spanish, or you just don't know about them. Same thing with everything, actually. So anytime, you can even walk the same Camino, I think, 100 times, and every time it will be different, and you're able to discover a little bit more. So learning a language is a little bit like that as well. Anytime you learn a little bit more, you're going to be able to go a little bit deeper, to connect a little bit more with the history, with local people. So it does really help in that sense. And I think a good thing as well is that Spanish in general, Spanish people, I mean, are generally quite open. So anytime you
Yes.
just do a little bit of an effort to try to at least say a couple of words, they'll be very happy that you're making the effort, and they'll welcome you as well, like even into their homes, or they'll offer you something for free just because you've made the effort, and they're seeing that you're, they're trying as well. So I think it's just, yeah, a part of the experience of walking a Camino in a foreign country is to also incorporate the language in it.
Yeah, and I think too, so right, the question is usually posed, do I need Spanish to walk the Camino? And like you said, the answer is no. We're not here to tell anybody, if you don't even want to say hola, you shouldn't go, you don't get to go. No one here is a gatekeeper. We especially are in the camp that your Camino is your own. So the question is not, if it were like, can I start in a remote area of France or Spain and communicate with people? I mean, maybe the answer there is probably no, unless you're using gestures. But I think the better question is your experience going to be quite as rich? and quite as connective if you don't have a little bit of the basic language. I mean, from our perspective, no, right? Because that's how we connect with people. But maybe other people say, I didn't miss it, I didn't need it. And I think it's especially fair for your first Camino. Like if you are called to do the Camino and you don't have a chance, you don't have the time, you just are somebody that you say, hey, I'm not good at languages. First of all, you can at least say hola, buenos dias, right? That's something we can all say. But I do think after that first experience, most of the people I talked to really wanted to learn some Spanish or French or Portuguese because they did see the misconnections there. So I do think that can come a little bit later as well. And I also think a really good tip, if you don't have any particular language skills in the local language, is to surround yourself with people who do.
Yeah.
Right? So surround yourself with either native speakers or non-native speakers who are also fluent. And I'll just give an example of my first, like my Camino family and my first Camino was these two cousins, Addison and Trish. We still stay in touch. Like, love these girls. They basically became my sisters. They didn't really speak much Spanish, but they wanted to go with me to like the local dive bars that none of the pilgrims were going to or whatever. They wanted to be adventurous, especially with food, because they're pescatarians, but they didn't know how to ask for anything other than, ensalada. Like, so they were eating
Yeah.
salads all day, every day. And
Yes.
I helped them figure out how to get mushrooms and sardines and all this other stuff. So I do think that's a good tip, right? So don't just stay with other English speakers. Make sure you're finding people that can bring you some of the richness that'll might inspire you to learn. Right, for your next journey, and a good there are times that having the language is super important. Hopefully, like, if you need to go to a local little doctor's office or hospital, which happened to a woman that, I walked on and off with on the Camino, her son needed medical attention, and she said it was one of the most stressful experiences of her life, trying to explain what had happened. So, again, not to scare anybody, we want anyone going on the Camino that can, but just to I want to change the dialogue from do you have to speak Spanish to why should you want to, right? And
Exactly.
so for those people who want to, what kind of services do you offer?
Exactly. So I have a little bit of a different types of approaches because I'm also adapting to each learner and I'm just seeing what people were asking me. So I started with group lessons because I think group lessons are great because then you get to meet firstly other people who are also preparing for the Camino. So it's a great setting so that you can just ask any silly questions that you might have because sometimes people are also a little bit afraid of saying like like am I going to sound stupid or is it going to be like a
Right.
stupid question if I'm asking like why is dinner so late in Spain, one of the
Yeah.
questions that everyone asks, right? But sometimes people are a little bit afraid, so my lessons are always a safe space. I always emphasize that yes, whatever we do in the lesson stays in the lesson, so you can also try practicing with sentences that are complicated for you, which in the beginning I know that when you're talking another language it's very intimidating because well, you have an accent, you don't know the words, you sound a little bit silly. If it's your first time abroad, there's like many things to take into account. So I think having that safe space where you can just practice and like do small tasks, it's the best
Yeah.
way to actually lose that fear so that once you're here in Spain you can actually put it into practice. And getting the feedback also from other students and seeing how everyone is progressing is just very motivating. So I have those monthly group lessons where we meet 4 times and then we go through the basic topics that we've seen. So talking about food, talking about directions, how to book a train, how to book a hotel room on the phone, the type of things that you would normally have to do on your Camino. So it's very applied. Since I've walked
Yeah.
the Camino, I also know like what you have to do. So I have all prepared, even like what dishes you can have if you're at the supermarket and you want to try something local. You don't have to go to the restaurant. You can buy some things in the store and just prepare something on your own and try the local food without even having to go to a restaurant. So yes, it's quite helpful to have that group setting. Now from that group I also discovered that many of my students just sometimes don't have the time or they just have like different schedules as me, because I live in Spain and people are also yes, from Australia, from
Right.
the US. So yeah, time is a little bit complicated sometimes to find a common time for everyone. So I also offer a little booklet, and the booklet is basically structured in a very simple way. You have a small dialogue, which is, as I say, those typical conversations that you will have in the restaurant or in the hostel. So asking for basic things. You're going to have a little explanation in English where you're going to see the key sentences. So it's not a grammar kind of booklet. It's just the key sentences with the audios as well, so that you can hear the what it sounds like. And then three little exercises where you just put into practice what you've just learned. So it's a very short kind of approach, so that you can just incorporate it to your day-to-day life. And on the other side, I have people who are in love with Spain and just say, I want to spend like more time in Spain once I finish my Camino or before I start. And then I have the
Yeah.
immersion courses. And so that's just a full week or even 2 weeks where you just come here to Muxia. So the last, it's at the end of the Camino for those who don't yet situate
They
Muxia.
go there in the way, right? At the end of the way, they're in
Exactly.
Muxia, right? Not Finisterre.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
yes, so it's becoming more and more popular. But for those who don't know, yes, it's in Galicia, so it's the end of the Camino near Santiago, by the seaside. And so yes, they come here in a very small local town, and what we do is just an immersion program where we have the content that's adapted to whatever your level is and whatever your objectives are. So if you want to practice for something more specific, I adapt to that. But we also have all the other activities that you can do here. So we have a cooking lesson with my husband, who's a chef. So we practice
Ooh.
cooking whatever you enjoyed from your Camino. So that's also adapted to whatever you prefer learning. We have horseback riding, we have surf lessons, yoga. So we have many activities that you do in immersion. So you're actually, yeah, surrounded by the Spanish language, and it's really a very, very nice experience. And I really love sharing this town that I really love with other people, and also, yeah, the history, everything behind it, which you normally don't see if you're just walking by as a pilgrim. You just arrive here, many people just stay for one night and then they head back, and so you have kind of like just a snapshot of what Muxia is. But if you
Yeah.
come here for a longer period, then you can discover a little bit more of the secrets behind this little town.
I did a surf camp in Galicia probably how old am I now? So about 13, 14 years ago, and it was wonderful. I think it's definitely one of the most unique regions in Spain. I think really proud people, right? Proud of their culture, of their language, right? Gallego is its own language, as we know.
Yes.
But and I also like the idea. I mean, I'm sure some people come before their Camino. I think to me, the draw would definitely be after to get to linger and make the experience last. But I always feel weird about staying in Santiago longer than one night because once you're done, it's like it's fun to stay in the square. But when I see other people finishing their journey, there's a joy, but there's also a sadness to it as well.
Yes.
Like this is their moment, their day, mine was yesterday, and it'll be again soon. But I love the idea of getting to be with other people that are kind of in the next chapter. And I'm sure some people come walking, right? Because there are routes
Exactly.
onto
There's a route,
Finisterre and
so more
Muxia.
and more people are coming. And yes, with some friends of mine here in Orusho, so in a small village here, they also have like an apartment that they rent out. Well, it's a cottage actually on the
Yeah.
countryside, so a casa rural, and they do some immersions as well. So some retreats where they have like different activities as well. And I always think that's the best way to end your Camino, because it's such a profound experience. Even if you just walk for a week or a short amount of time,
Right.
it just changes you. And I think you need some time to just process it. So here is the perfect place because it's really quiet, it's small, it's by the seaside, and there's something, at least for me, about the sea where it's just like, okay, there's nothing else in front of me. Like I've finished literally walking, like there's no, I cannot continue. Now let me
Yeah.
think, where do I want to go from here? And there's just, yeah, that space that the sea has in front of you, it just makes you think of all the opportunities. So for me, I think it's really the best way, yes, to end your Camino.
Yeah, and I love how you talk about your group classes or I mean your one-on-one. Did you say you do one-on-one classes if people prefer that?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure like it's so important that that is a no judgment zone, right? Because I feel like a lot of times And I made a video about this recently about how the social media experience is really affecting people before they go out and walk, and how thankfully the people you meet on your Camino are not at all like like the naysayers and the negative people in the Facebook groups. And I think a lot of times fear of judgment is what's keeping people from moving forward with asking questions, learning a language. And I really think there is no dumb question, even if it's been answered 100 other times. I think what people forget is that when you're just starting out, when you discover the Camino and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do this, but I have no idea even where to start. Like, you want to start getting answers, but it feels almost really daunting to have to like Google and find things piecemeal. So that's what Facebook groups are for, right? That's what they're for. If you want to judge, like, just keep scrolling. That's always been my
Exactly.
philosophy. But I
Yes.
think, especially, I'll get off my rant, but I think especially with languages, um, yeah, if somebody is making the effort to learn, it's you want them to understand. Unfortunately, if you have to say it in a way that will be understood, right? Accent is super important, but you'll get there, right? The most important thing is getting some of the vocabulary down and just trying, because I had the same experience. Like, I have the same impression as you. Spanish people are so welcoming when it comes to just small attempts to speak the language. Um, so I think a little bit goes a long way.
Definitely.
Now, obviously, this is your business, right? This is part of your livelihood. And so there's a difference between this personalized attention versus free resources out there. I know a lot of times people recommend, for example, Duolingo. I think it's a fantastic free resource. I think anything that like anything that gets people practicing a language is fantastic. Turns it into a game, makes you the people that post their streaks. I'm always like applauding them, because anything you take the time to dedicate to every day, that's a win. You should be celebrated. But at the same time, I learned a language, Spanish, as a kid, and then started to teach myself French as an adult before I spent immersive time right in France. And I found that for me, it was important to have a variety of resources, right? Like, I played with Duolingo. I paid for a program that for me it was my style. I like drills, I like vocabulary, I like grammar tests. I like those things. But I was missing, right, the practice with somebody. So I went to France. What are your thoughts about people that say, "Oh, you don't need to pay for anything. All you need is a free resource and you'll be great."
Yes. So as you were saying, as long as you're starting, I think that's already like worth celebrating. It's really difficult in our day and age to just find time, and I'm aware of that. We're all like running around with so many things, and it's difficult to find time. So it's great if you're starting that way, but there is, so what we were talking about, when does Spanish help? So if you just want to cover like the basic vocabulary, just have like couple of single words in your head, that's good. But then you're going to find exactly that if you're not practicing, and languages, it's all about practice really. So if you want to speak, you need to speak, and you cannot speak to an app yet. Probably someday we'll have, those AI intelligences that just talk to us. But for now, you do need a person. And the good thing also about having someone guide you through the way is, as I was saying, like, I've walked the Camino, I've been in many different foreign countries, I've learned many different foreign languages. So I'm walking ahead of you. I'm just showing you the way. I'm just letting you know, okay, careful here. You're going to mispronounce this word because I know it doesn't sound the way it looks. So
Yeah.
careful with this, or careful with this ingredient. If you're vegetarian, careful in Spain. It's not going to be that easy to find a vegetarian dish. So I've already been there. I've done that. I've walked the
Yeah.
walk. So now I can help you, make it easier for you. Just, yeah, have that experience, also of, as I say, richness of knowing a little bit more about the country. Because I think if you want to learn the language, it's much more than just, memorizing words. What you're really is opening your worldview and learning more about other people, how they live, what's normal in other countries and not in yours, just different lifestyles. It's so much more than just memorizing vocabulary, which is basically what Duolingo wants you to do. It's to memorize a sentence and to know how to use it.
Right.
That's useful, yes, but there is so much more that you can discover. And so my aim is just to transmit that and hopefully just let that little seed of Spanish grow in you so that you can fall in love with it, which is what I always say to my students. I love my language. I love Spanish. I love all other languages. I love traveling. So I just want to transmit that to other people so that it becomes part of your daily life, because same as with the Camino, it's you start, you know where you start, but then once you've walked the way, it just continues. It doesn't end, that last day of your Camino. It's something that just
Right.
stays with you. So language is going to be the same things. It's going to accompany you in your day-to-day life and hopefully make it better, because then you can choose, okay, I really like the café con leche, let me bring that back home. How can I do that? Or I really enjoyed having a siesta after lunch, like I found that was really nice. Can I incorporate that in my daily routine? So there are things like that that you can incorporate. You can, yeah, watch movies, listen to songs that then will bring you back to Spain. So it's kind of keeping that connection alive with the Camino and with the learning experience as a whole.
Yeah, and I think too that when you start to learn a language, the sort of differences in that language between, let's say, Spanish or French and English can also serve as a window to the culture, right? So I think I paid less attention to that when I was learning Spanish because it was in school, and then I studied abroad when I was 20 and just wanted to party and have fun. And I was not paying quite attention to sort of the beauty of the language itself, but learning French in my 30s, like one I love how the French, instead of saying something is like good or you know like great or whatever, they always put it's like it's not bad. So the one I love is c'est plutôt pas mal. It's rather not bad, when they mean like this is really freaking good. And so when you understand that that's how the language works, you also get insight into the mentality of like, oh, this is maybe why everyone thinks Americans are like always optimistic, always positive, always. So to me, it's like, and that richness grows, right? From you have to start somewhere. Those things come a little bit later, but I really think, and I'm sure you can speak to this, like you can start learning at any age, right? Like what are the age
Exactly.
ranges of your students?
They are all ages, generally also older women, because they have like a little bit more time. And I think they're, women, I say, because generally it is women who speak more than men. Men are more quiet. So I think they don't find maybe that much of a need to learn a new language. But for women, it's generally a passion of them, and they've been learning on and off Spanish, or they studied at, university, and then they left it, and they think, oh, this is
Mhm.
a great opportunity to, refresh my knowledge. So I think that's awesome, because yes, it proves there is no age, which is something that's really wonderful. I think that you're always learning. And yes, going back to that connection with language and culture, with things as simple as the way we speak, like how we order things in Spain. If you don't know the language, we just say like una caña, like
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, it
We
sounds
don't say
super rude, right?
please. Exactly. It sounds very rude. And I think there are many miscommunication problems on the Camino, where pilgrims sometimes feel like they're not treating me really well. Like I feel like disrespected. But in truth, that's just how we do it. There's
Right.
no bad intention. So if nobody has walked, as I was saying before, like shown you, okay, this is normal, don't be scared, people here, like if you're in a bar, it's kind of like a wild jungle. You're just going to have to find, your spot, and people will be
Yeah,
screaming, and it's normal, and they're not upset. Same thing with volume. I speak very loudly, and Spaniards speak very loudly. They're not upset at you. It's just the way they speak. And I think knowing these things really enhances your experience as a whole, because you're like, okay, I've been warned, this is what it's like, so I won't be
yeah,
afraid if someone is just telling me like una caña like that. If they're just ordering without saying please or anything like that, they're not upset at me. It's just another way of communication. So there is so much more than just, as I say, just learning the words. And also
right.
going back to the Duolingo topic, another problem as well is that Duolingo is mainly based with vocabulary from Latin America. So in daily things such as food, um, glasses, for example. There are words like that that are not the same in Spain and in different countries of Latin America.
Yeah.
So then you're learning the Latin American version, and when you come here, people just won't understand because it's not. It's the same with English from the UK and from the US. You have some words that you don't use the same way. Well, it
Right.
happens the same. So it's, yeah, when you don't know those words, it's just going to be double the effort because you're going to learn one word which is not going to serve you, and then you're going to have to go back and erase that word from your vocabulary and learn the correct word. So I think, why not go directly to what you need? And also, yes, with one-to-one courses or group courses, they're very small. They're 3 to 5 students, so it's really a small group. And then I can cater, for example, if you're a vegetarian, I can explain everything related to words related to what you want or don't want, or things like that. So it's really specific to what you are going to need, which I think is the most efficient way to learn a language, just to focus on what do I really need and how can I get there faster. Like, that's the beginning of the journey. And then, as I say, hopefully in that process you'll just fall in love with the language and just become part of a lifelong journey of learning a language.
Yeah, and I recently read a book, and he was talking about the power of memory dividends, and he said, like, memories that, um in the moment seem embarrassing or frustrating or whatever, you tend to only remember the positive later, and I think that's so tied to the language learning experience. Like, I remember my first time in Spain, ordering and saying, like, "Can I have?" Could just I don't know why we ask if we can have something in the US, it's just sort of a way that we talk. And the waiter was like, "Why are you asking me?" Right? And I could have been like, "Well, why are you being rude?" Right? But my friend was like, "No, no, we just say like we loosely translated like give me this or like,
Exactly.
put this on the table, right?"
Exactly.
Um so I think that's key for sure. So, what are 5 like if you want to pick 5, it could be 5, 7, whatever. What are a few key phrases that anyone listening to this can be like, "Hey, I'm going to today, right, learn one new thing every day. I'm going to learn a couple phrases today," and that might get them motivated to keep going.
Yeah, so the first one, definitely, it's hola, the one we've talked about. So at least if you are to learn just one word, just choose that one, hola, which means hi. Very simple, no complicated letters or anything. Hola, very straightforward, and just
But not
greeting people.
hola, right?
Exactly, not
Hola.
hola, exactly. So hola, first word that you need to learn because you'll just be able to greet people, and that's already a great start. For me, first word hola. Second one, definitely gracias. So thank you. This one is a little bit trickier in the pronunciation. So it's gracias. And here in Spain, it's going to be with a th sound, gracias. Now, to practice pronunciation, it's very helpful if you use something like Google Translate or something like that. You have that little icon which you can click and hear what it sounds like, and just practice on your own and record yourself so that you can compare, what you sound like in your head and then what you really sound like, because generally it's not exactly the same, but it's a really good way to practice. So gracias, thank you, because you want to be thankful, right, for everything that they're trying to do for you. Gracias, definitely going to help. And the other one, por favor. So that means please, por favor, or you can just cut it to porfa, which is the like informal way of saying it, which we use among friends, but you can also use it if you want a shorter version, porfa, so please, which, as in any language, as we were saying, it's we don't use it much, but it is very good if you can use it, because it's going to give the other person the sense that, okay, I'm trying my best, like,
Mhm.
please, can you do this? The next one would be lo siento. Lo siento means sorry, which is also, I think, a very important word, because sometimes, we mess up or there's something that we did wrong and we just want to let the other person know, okay, I'm sorry. Lo siento. And the last one is vale, which is just my favorite word, because we use it for everything. Like, you'll hear it all of the time here in Spain. It just means okay or yes. So if somebody's asking you something, you can just say vale, 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 which means yes, yes, yes. Or vale, if they're asking that at the end, they're checking, like, is it okay or right? So those would be like very basic words, and I think they help quite a lot, just knowing these very simple words.
Yeah, those are 5 good ones. I think for vale, it's good for people to know that it's written with a V. So if you see VALE, but the V sound actually, so the V sound sounds more like a B and the B sound
Exactly.
sounds more like a V in Spanish. That's a little bit of an advanced topic, but just so people, if anyone ever texts you, like if you're texting and using Google Translate to reserve or something, and they say like, if you say I want to reserve a room for tonight and they say vale with a V, that's what that is.
Exactly. So yes, vale means like okay, yes,
And
definitely.
we'll add, so ante lo siento, we can add no hablo español. I mean,
Exactly.
let me know if I'm wrong. I think that's a really nice way to indicate like you've learned a little bit and you're not just saying no hablo español, right? Like, sorry, speak English when you're saying lo siento, no hablo español. Like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. To me, I think that would be a polite way to at least indicate that the conversation can't take place in Spanish or you may
Exactly.
need help.
Exactly, and it's also a very important sentence to know, because as we were saying, like people are very welcoming, very friendly. So if you start saying like just hola and just a couple of words in Spanish, they will probably try to speak to you full on in Spanish with a
Yeah.
very high speed, which is typical from Spain.
Yeah.
So you might need to know that sentence like sorry, I don't speak Spanish, so that they either become aware that you don't speak that much and then they just slow down a little bit their pace, or just switch to English if that's what you need in that moment. So I think those types of simple sentences are definitely very good, and they're going to help you, as I say, navigate in daily situations in any kind of place. So it's always like 5 simple words that you can use in any context.
And if someone feels a little bit shy about saying gracias with that kind of TH sound, if they say gracias, are they gonna be understood?
Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
everything is there. From the pronunciation point of view, I always say, like, if it's just a slight, careful with the vowels. I always say vowels. We only have 5 in Spanish, and those you have to master.
Yeah.
But for the rest, you're going to be, as I say, here in Spain, people are not as picky as I have found people, because I also speak French, because I was born in Belgium, and so I taught
Yeah.
French, and I know French are a little bit more picky, or they understand less when they're hearing foreign accents. Here in Spain, people generally are quite welcoming, as I say, and they'll be more than happy that you're trying, and they'll try to find a way to communicate. Hand gestures, as you were saying, are also a language, so all is welcome if you don't
Yeah, I
know.
can feel the Latina in you. My wife
Exactly.
too.
So yes, in any case like that, just try whichever way you can think of. But as I say, the important thing is always your predisposition. So if you're starting already with, okay, I'm going to learn a couple of words, I'm going to, just play it by ear, see if it works, just try with Google Translate, add a little bit of pictures, whatever helps you just communicate. I think that's the best way to start. And as I say, once you fall into the Camino and you're just in love with it as we are, then you're going to be finding that you're going to come back, and then probably learning a little bit more each time is just going to be, as you say, it's not what you have to do, it's just the best way that you can make the most of it, right? That you can just move forward in your Camino.
Yeah, and I love your point about the vowels in Spanish. It's like the biggest gift of Spanish to non-native speakers is that the vowels, they're 5, like you said, and they have 1 sound. I think French and English speakers, we have to, I don't know, I mean, some people are probably picky, but I think it's also, my wife is a French speaker, I'm an English speaker, and one wrong vowel sound can wildly change I mean, it is just a totally different word. So in Spanish, like for anyone out there kind of on the fence about learning Spanish, know that at least from a pronunciation standpoint, um, it is, as long as you can learn those rules, you will learn how to pronounce really any word. So that part
Exactly.
is nice.
Yes, that's the simple part about Spanish. It's very transparent. So once you hear a word correctly, you can write it down, and the other way around, if you know how to pronounce, anytime you see a word written, you will be able to say it, as long as you keep in mind, yeah, the vowels and a couple of more difficult letters. It's much simpler than English or French with that regard. So yes, it's a very welcoming treat if you're starting, that you have a simple thing to start with.
Since you mentioned that you offer cooking classes with your husband, and now I'm hungry and I have food on the brain. What are a couple of your favorite local foods that people have to try on the Camino?
Yes, so definitely the tortilla de patatas. That's our universal dish, not paella, because a lot of people tell me like, "Oh, I want to go to Spain to try the paella," and I've got news for you: paella is only for Valencia, so that region is the only region that really does the real paella. Then we can get into the debate of what is a paella and what is not a paella. But in any case, if you want to try the real one, you will only try it in Valencia, or so that by the seaside in the Mediterranean. So if you take a look at the Camino de Santiago, not really on on the route, especially the Frances and the Norte, they're very distant. So the only dish that I would say is really like universal in Spain is the tortilla de patata, which you can find everywhere, and it's also approved for vegetarians because it's just eggs. If you're a vegan, I'm sorry, we don't have an option, but for vegetarians, it's also approved because it's just eggs and potatoes. A very simple recipe that you can also take back home, and so it's very good. And each person does it differently. So I think
Yeah.
it's that type of simple dish that each family has their own little secrets or ingredients, and so it's really nice to try. Here in Galicia, you can try anything that's related to seafood. But I always say as well a word of warning. So not all seafood that you can find in restaurants actually comes from Galicia. So for example, the pulpo that is so famous, it actually comes from Morocco. So it's not even grown here because people are
Oh
just,
my gosh.
yes, because people order it so much that just water here is not, cannot provide those many pulpos for everyone, so those many octopus in English for everyone. So we just import it from Morocco. So yes, those kind of things people are generally unaware of. So yes,
Huh.
when you're trying something local, try to research a little bit as well. That's why I'm saying, like, when you're learning in things like these, you're going to discover things that you didn't even know were possible. So in this case, yes. But
Yeah.
pulpo is definitely the staple dish, I would say, for here, for Galicia. So octopus, I do know that a lot of people are a little bit on the fence of trying it
Yeah.
because yes, it's yeah, it's an octopus and it looks very, um, especially from the Netflix show.
I
Since then,
know.
a lot of people have decided not to eat it, which I completely respect. But it is one of the dishes that's very common here. And then the last one, the tarta de Santiago, so the cake that you get in Santiago, which is a very, very simple recipe. If you haven't tried it at home, it's very simple, just very simple ingredients, very easy to make, very tasty, gluten free. So it's got, it hits all the boxes and it's really
Yeah.
very, very simple to make. So definitely try it in Santiago and try to remake it at home because it's very simple to do.
The Tarta de Santiago at the Parador in Santiago blew my mind. Like, they have an incredible breakfast. I tell everyone to go even if you're not staying at the hotel. I think you can pay to get the breakfast there. They're like, it looks right out onto the square. I mean, you could probably spend hours eating lunch, breakfast and lunch, honestly,
Yes.
but their Tarta de Santiago was incredible. And well, I'll just add one more food for our vegan friends as well, the pimientos del padrón, right? The
Yes.
shishito peppers, I think we call them in English. I think it's one every 1 in 13 or 14 is spicy, so it's kind of like a game. Usually, they have a sweet, mild flavor. They're grilled, like, just kind of flash grilled on each side, some salt, delicious, and then every once in a while, you come across a spicy one, so it's a little bit of an adventure.
Yes, exactly.
Um and now when we were planning, um, this call, you said, it's gotta be in the next week or so because you're leaving for a Camino pretty soon, right? Like, and I'm
Exactly.
hoping you'll come back and you'll let me interview when you're done, but why don't you tell everybody, where you're headed?
Exactly. So yes, as I've said, like the Camino has been in my life in very important moments. So the first one I didn't mention before, but it was after a heart surgery. So that was my first Camino. Like just
Oh,
a
wow.
couple of months after the heart surgery, I decided, okay, let's do this. I was young and foolish, so
Yeah, yeah,
that's
why
why.
not?
Why not? The second one was after my graduation. Then after I got married, and now I have two kids. So I thought, okay, this is a perfect moment to do it. So we're heading out with the kids. My kids are 1 and 4, so that, yeah, they're very young, and so it's going to be an adventure for sure. We have
Yeah,
not planned much. I like that idea of just heading out and see what life brings. I know a lot of people would say, like, you're going with kids, are you like out of your mind?
yeah,
Like,
wow.
what? But in my case, I always believe that the Camino provides, like that saying that you can
Yes.
read across in so many sites. I do believe not only the Camino, life in general provides, and if you're flexible enough, things will just sort themselves out. You just have to give life a little bit of space and a little bit of uncomfort as well. So you will have some
Yeah.
moments which are uncomfortable. I'm not saying it's going to be all roses, definitely not with kids, but I think it's a great experience as well for young children to just be aware that there is like that spirit that you can find on the Camino, which I
Mhm.
think is special. Like you would agree probably that it's different from other places. The Camino, it has that kind
Yeah.
of good intention around it, and there's like that kindness, as we were saying. I think that's the spirit of the Camino. That's what we try to carry on to other people, or that's what I try to do as well with my job, is just to bring that kindness into general life, because we're kind of lacking it, I think, in many other
Oh, yeah.
aspects. So it's really nice to find a space like that where people are just kind to each other, looking out for each other, that we're in it together, right? That idea that yes, we're all walking towards that same destination, which we are also in life. And
Yeah.
we're very different from each other, from all types of walks of life, but we're all going there. So that's what I want to pass on to my children. They're very young. Hopefully we'll get to do more Caminos later on. So this time it's just going to be very short stages, because with kids, you can imagine, we're not going to aim for long stages. Probably we'll do like 10 kilometers a day. I'm not even sure if we'll get to Santiago. I'm not even sure if we'll have to taxi. And I know a lot of people will say like, oh, she's taxiing the Camino de Santiago. Well, I'm adapting the Camino to my
Yeah.
situation right now. I have kids. When I was younger, I did, yeah, the 30 kilometers walking, and it was a very different period. But that's why
Sure.
we were saying in the beginning, right? I think the spirit of the Camino is really, yeah, kindness and just encompassing your life. So if you have whatever issues, it's up to you. You know yourself, so you do your Camino. In my case, it's going to be, as I say, an adventure. We'll see where it leads us. We start in Caminha, so the coastal path, and then we're going to see
Is that
how far we
Portugal?
get. Exactly, yes. So we're
Okay.
starting just in the border. So we're crossing with the boat, which I thought would be like a nice
Ooh.
start for the
Yeah.
experience. So we're starting with the boat crossing from Caminha to Aguarda, and so we're doing that little first stage, which is 6 kilometers, just to test a little bit the waters,
Aw.
and then we'll continue little by little and see how far we get. We have a train on the 30th, so we have around 10 days just to figure out how far we get. And then if we reach Santiago, great. If we don't, it's great as well. And if we have to
Yeah.
adapt, if it's pouring down rain, which it has been last week, then we'll probably have to just think of a different solution. So yes, it's a little bit of the process of the adventure, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's Camino angels are so real, right? When we talk about the Camino providing, um, and you like to hope that when somebody else out there is talking about a Camino angel, maybe one day you were theirs, right? Kind of going in with that spirit of servitude, and whether you're religious or not, this idea of being, I've talked about this before, being a disciple or being a helper, like that, like the Camino, yeah, you're there for your journey, but if you only focus on what's here and you miss what's around you, I think you're losing a lot of the experience.
Exactly.
How would you say the Camino provides in Spanish?
We don't have a sentence, actually. I don't
No.
know why it's used in English, but we don't say like el camino da, el camino entrega, but there's no like good provide, a good word for provide in Spanish. So yes, it doesn't, the philosophy
Maybe
doesn't
because
really
it's
exist.
so clear, like,
Exactly.
that's there's no other option, right, than to be
Exactly.
helpful, and if, someone needs to sleep on your floor, you open your house or whatever, so
Exactly.
that's gonna be so special, and I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there that would love to hear your experience when you come back, if you wouldn't mind coming back to the channel
Yes,
and
I'd really be
letting
happy,
us
because
know.
we actually started this whole adventure because we hosted a family here, because they were staying at the hostel here in front.
Oh.
They were a family of Japanese, and they had two small kids who were incidentally just my kids' age. So it was just like
Oh, that's
pure luck. And we were
wonderful.
like, oh, wow, that's great. You're walking with your kids. Like it hadn't even like we hadn't even processed that option of, yeah, we can walk with young kids. And they were like, yes, we've walked the Portuguese Camino with them and it's been really nice, we've learned a lot of things. It was hard sometimes, and so they were explaining a little bit their Camino, and so we started thinking like, huh, we're going to do this as well. So I hope I can talk to you again, and then hopefully we'll have very good stories to tell, and then just, yeah, bring people
Maybe a
along for
few
the
bad
Camino.
ones, but they'll
Yes,
be
as well.
important.
With good memories, and just yeah, to be able to just, yeah, share that idea that yes, you can walk the Camino whichever way you want, you can adapt it to your lifestyle. And the important thing, as I say, is just bring like that spirit of helping others and just being there for others, which I think is the idea uh, underneath the whole Camino philosophy.
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited for you. I think that's going to be just an amazing experience. And I'm excited for the viewers out there because you actually are going to be offering 10% off of all of your products, right? Your book, your classes, your immersive experience. So, for any of you out there that are interested, well, you can give us your website. I'll also be sure to put it in the description below. And if you're interested, you have a form people can submit, or they can just email you directly. Depending on when this gets posted, you may still be on your Camino. So guys,
Exactly.
if you don't hear anything for a couple of days, don't worry. And you'll just want to include the code Wanderlust in the
Exactly.
email or in the text box, or if you write Wanderlusting Lawyer or whatever, Sada will know, but that'll get you 10% off on anything you guys want. I hope this has gotten you all excited about the Camino in general, but also maybe thinking a little bit differently about how learning Spanish can really enhance your experience. Although I guess too, I mean, we didn't talk about it, but um, if people wanted some French help, have you done that before as
Yes, yes.
well?
I before I taught. Now I teach mainly Spanish, but before I used to be an English and French teacher. So yes, I have materials
Perfect.
for French as well. So
Yeah.
it's possible as well. As I say, I adapt to each student. So yes, it's just a matter
Yeah.
of asking.
Okay, wonderful. So, do you want to just tell everybody now listening your website and your email address, and then I'll also make sure it's in the description below.
Great, perfect. Yeah. So my commercial name, or my business's name, is Crisol Español. So you have here, below there
And up
the
above
how
your
it's
shoulder, yeah.
exactly, and here, yeah, here above how it's spelled. So it's Crisol Español. So you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, and my website is also crisolespañol.com. So yes, it will be in the show notes, I guess. So no, don't worry too much. You can find it there. And yes, if I don't reply for some reason and you just send me a message and you don't get any reply, please get back to me. Send me an email again, because I always reply. So if you don't get a reply, it means something went wrong. Also,
Yeah.
check your spam folder, because I know sometimes, just since I send a link, for example, for to meet up, sometimes it goes to the spam folder unwantedly. So please check everything, get back to me. And as I say, you can search me on Instagram, Facebook, just contact me whichever way is easiest for you. And yes, I'll be really happy to help you in your journey. And as I say, I really love to encourage people to walk the Camino, and just to lose that initial fear that we have when we're tackling something new, and just trying to bring that spirit of adventure also into learning a new language. It's an adventure. It's a process. It has its ups and downs, just like the Camino. So it's just a great way to just do something different and discover new things about yourself and about the language and the culture of Spanish.
Well, to that I will say muchísimas gracias, Sara. It's been such
De
a pleasure
nada.
having you here. It's been forever that we've talked about doing this, and I was really happy. Language learning is near and dear to my heart. I believe in it so deeply. And I just love, how you've tailored your program to really fit everyone's different needs for the Camino. So, guys, make sure you reach out to Sara, check out her programs. I know I'm definitely going to come find you in Muxia when I make it there. It's like high on my list to make it out to the sea, because in 3 Caminos, I still haven't done that. So, thinking next year I'm turning 40. I'm thinking maybe for a birthday, a really nice long Camino. But
Ah, yes.
um, enjoy your upcoming Camino. As we always say to end things here at the channel, muy buen camino. And we'll catch up when you get back. I hope you have a wonderful journey.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.